So what if we wanted to, say, look at the total number of baptisms across each of these years? Now, again, we're approximating the birth rates of this time. So creating a total or getting a total is actually very common. And in other words, what I'm saying is it's common for us to take two variables and combine them to create a new one. And we're going to do just that. The sort of old school way, the mechanical, manual way, would be to use the $ as our indexer. So we would type Arbuthnot $boys plus Arbuthnot $girls, and we would get 82 totals, right? So all R is doing is it's taking in each year the total number of boys baptized and adding that to the total number of girls and then returning the result. We can't really use that. It's kind of clunky and cumbersome. We would have to type that over and over. Let's not do that. That would be too time consuming and tedious. So we'll get rid of that. What we can do though, is we can use the famous or infamous pipe operator, which is that vertical bar with a greater than sign. And what we will do is use the pipe operator to connect to a new function called mutate. And mutate is basically a function from the tidyverse package that allows us to create a new variable. We can call that variable whatever we want. The most important part there, of course, is the boys plus girls. We could call it, we're naming it total because that just makes sense, but it could be something else. So now we see that new variable or that new column in there. Ignore the boy ratio column. We're going to actually look at that in just a second, but we'll use the total variable to create that. So we've got our new variable. Congratulations, you created a new variable. We called it total. The pipe operator allowed us to do that. And now that we have this new variable, it might be interesting to look at the trend line of the total number of baptisms. We've been looking at it from the perspective of just, say, boys or girls, but let's take a look using the geom line here, and let's plot our total variable, the new variable we created, on the y-axis. So again, we're just using that new total variable, and then we'll plot that, and it looks more or less the same. We still see the typical trends that we've been seeing here. In fact, if you didn't know that the y-axis had changed to a total variable, then we probably would never realize that this wasn't one of the two sexes there of the baptism records. So this is the total. Again, the pattern looks just the same. And we can actually test that theory. And so I'm going to kind of map, you don't have to do this, but I'm just going to show you, we could add on to this ggplot call. I'm going to create a new geom line call, but in here, I have to use the aesthetics because this is a separate sort of line. So let's add the boys line here to our plot. And I'm going to change that to brown 1, kind of a color I'm into lately. Although it didn't actually work. I should have added the color between those two parentheses, but let's just go ahead and add another line to our existing plot. We'll use girls this time. And we'll notice something interesting other than the fact that I can't spell, and then other than the fact that that the trend lines mirror each other. It looks like, though, obviously the point is the pattern is still more or less the same. Obviously, we're looking at two different data sets here, more or less, in terms of the y-axis. But it's interesting to note that in each of those years, the boys, there were more boys baptized in each of those years. So the question is, we could ask is, let's look at that, and we can create an additional variable and we'll call that variable boy ratio, which you saw. Because in exercise 3, what I'm asking you to do is to generate a plot of the proportion of boys born over time. And then I'm asking you to respond, what do you see? So let's grab this code down here where we've got the boy ratio. And we're going to take our total variable and we're not going to use this, but let's grab that. We're going to divide boys, or the total, by the total baptisms by the number of boys baptized. So let me come down here, enter a couple of new lines. And again, we're using that mutate function. If you look in the operation, we're adding total, using total as the denominator there. We'll get that. So I've already run that. And then let's go ahead and I'm going to just manually type in Arbuthnot, and we should see, and there it is. So there is the boy ratio variable that we created. So we've got two new variables that we created, total and boy ratio, using what we already had. And so you can see by looking here, just in these first couple of rows that we see, there were slightly more boys baptized in these years than there were girls. For example, almost 53% of all baptisms in the year 1629 were boys. The pattern sort of continues. Looks like in year 7 there, slightly more, but in each of those years, more boys were being baptized. So exercise 3, I'm asking you to generate a plot. And if you want, if you're a savvy R user, you would take that plot that we did of the total and change that Y axis, the variable on the Y axis, to our boy ratio. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So the question is, what do you see? What do you see? Well, we get the impression that the trend is all over the place, right? When we look at the ratio or the percentage, this is a proportion of the boys baptized over time, but pay close attention to that Y-axis. We're really zoomed in here. We get the impression that it's all over the place, but you have to concentrate, you have to focus and look at the Y-axis. We're really zoomed in. You see the Y-axis there. We're zoomed in between 51% and 53%, more or less, right? So I'm going to, and you don't have to do this either, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and create, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand the limits of the Y-axis to include basically 100%. So I'm going to tell it to start at 0 and go all the way up to 1, because these are proportions. And then you can see here that once we zoom out, the trend is really that it's pretty flat over time, and that, again, slightly more boys are baptized in each of those years than there were girls. And that trend bears out over all of these years. And when we zoom out, we can see then that it's pretty flat. So that's kind of an interesting way of looking at it. So be sure to note that in your answer. Until we zoom out, we get the impression that the baptisms are all over the place.